Hi, I'm Andrew Stevenson, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make a graph paper pad. Now I know you can download these from places like Bookbolt quite simply, but I always say if you can make it yourself, make it yourself, because that way you can make it exactly how you want and you can customise the living chuff out of it. So I'm going to set up this document. It's going to be 6x9. Obviously you make yours however big you feel like. I'll change it to CMYK. I'm planning on making this black and white, although the standard colour is very reasonably priced on KDP, so I recommend you at least looking at that. I will put the margins on, although they're not massively important in this sort of book. And we will be using bleed. So that's there. We will be working on the master page. And the first thing we're going to do, and really it's the only thing you need to do to make a simple graph paper pad, is to draw a table. Now make a table any size on your page. And that is going to make up these squares of the graph paper. To do that we need to manipulate the cell size. So select all of the cells and then in the table tab under borders select all, and this is where we change the size of the square. So most graph paper pads come in 1/2 inch, 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch square. We'll go middle for diddle and not do a 325 inch one. We'll do a 1/4 of an inch one. And then we need to add more columns and rows to it, so it fills up the entire width of the spread, including the bleed. So to do that in Affinity, you just grab the 2 arrows and drag it to your required length. That's the columns, and do the same for the rows. Just drag it down. And that is your basic graph paper. You could make a book of 110 or however many pages you want off that, and as long as you get your cover and your niche words, keywords right, there's no reason why that won't sell as well as any other. You can also make different sized squares and have them in the same pad. So instead of just having one book of one size square, you could have them of all of the 3 sizes I mentioned. So that's the 1/4 inch. That was the 1/4 inch. We'll do the 1/8 of an inch one, which will be 1.25. Again, add as many columns and rows as you need. And then we'll do the same for the 1/2 inch squares. Again, drag it as big as you need, going over the bleed. And that's it. That is your 3 sizes of graph paper. Now you can do them any size you want, but they're the classics. And you could have 35 pages of each one in the book. Either do it in chunks, like 35 pages of master page A, then 35 of master page B, 35 of master page C. Or you could do it ABC on each spread and then rotate all the way through. So that's your basic sort of graph paper. You can also, as we've done previous, you can edit the style of the table. So I've selected all the cells there. Again, click on all for the border, and I'm going to change that colour to grey. And I'm also going to change the line to .e. And there you go, this way. And again, you can do this on any style of paper. The squares are still visible, but they're not impeding your ability to write on them. Because, you know, something like that, you'd feel a bit odd just writing in sentences across it because the black is too dark. This is a lot more faded, so, you know, you'd happily use the squares or, you know, just use it as lined paper. Another thing you can do in Affinity is apply a master page to a master page. And when you do that, you know, something special happens. So this is the 1/2 inch. I'm going to add to this page master page A. And you can probably guess what happens, but I like it. There you go. You've got your 1/4 inch squares inside your 1/2 inch squares. The best of both worlds. Now you've got the big squares if you want them. You've got your little squares if you want them. You could still use it as writing paper. Technically, you know, it is just that paper. It is 1/4 inch square, but you've got a larger black border around the 1/2 inch square. Now you can only apply 2 masters to one page, unfortunately, because if you could add more, then I'd add the C as well. So you'd have all the squares, you know, on one page. So you could add another 30 pages of that to the end of your book, or, you know, you've got 4. You could have 4 different pads of graph paper, each with, you know, the 4 different sizes I've shown you there. So that's, you know, that's fine for normal graph paper. If you do this fancy graph paper, it might stand out, you know, a bit more than others on Amazon. But I like to tie things into the niche all the way through the book. You know, if you're going to use your graph paper pad for gardening purposes, say you want to plot out maybe how your veg patch is going to look, you want to measure soil acidity or, you know, crop growth, the yield of certain plants, you can of course do it on normal graph paper, but it's a bit boring. I think it's far better to try and niche it down even further. You do lose a little bit of the, you know, the page size, but it makes it look better, and I'll show you how to do that. Although, you know, if you've seen the other videos, you'll know exactly how. So this is a new master page D, and I'm just going to draw. We'll just use a 1/4 inch table. Notice I am sticking inside the margins, and then I'm going to stick in them even more in a second. So the reason I'm sticking in the margins is because we're not going to have the graph paper to the edge of the page. So if there's any cutting mishap, you know, the margins are in place so you don't lose any of your work. You know, the outside picture might be lost, but you don't lose the actual graph paper itself. Obviously, in an ideal world, you know, there won't be any cutting mishaps, but I've seen it happen. So it's best to be prepared. Also, you know, there's a chance KDP might reject it if the margins are breached in this style of graph paper. So we are going to use these insets just to bring it in, you know, a little bit further away from the margin, just 1/4 inch all the way around. So now I am going to make the 1/4 inch paper again. We need to drag it to the right size, but this time we're only going as far as the margin. And again, you know, delete cells until you do the end of the margin. I will shift control drag this across to the other side. And then now, you've got a nice white border, which is fine. Some people like a white border, but you know me, I'm going to pack that with my niche. So continuing on with the gardening theme, I'm going to grab some gardening images. So, place an image tool. These are colour images. It's fine. You can use black and white if you want. And I'm going to use... I'll use that one, carrots. And I'll just drag it out. And then shift control. So now I have the full page covered in carrots. Select the images, right click, and then send them to the back. So now our graph paper's on top, but you can't make it out, of course, probably because it's full of bleeding carrots. And to remedy that, we grab our trusty rectangle. Draw a rectangle, cover the inner margin, change the fill to white, and then we will send that, again arrange, we'll send that back one, and another one. And there you have your garden themed graph paper. Now, obviously find your own images. I got these from Creative Fabrica, read the license, blah blah blah. Use whatever image you need to portray your niche. So this, I've got carrots here. Obviously gardening, I could niche that down even further into a crop grown book. So you could have a picture of any crop you wanted, and you could encourage people, use the description to record the yield, when seeds were planted, when you expect to harvest them, when they need protecting from the frost, how hardy they are, what sort of soil conditions they're like. Encourage people to use the squares to plot out the veg plots, and it's just a simple way. It doesn't take a lot of time, but you've niched down a simple graph paper pad into something more attractive. People who are using graph paper to record details of plants, I would argue that they'd go for something like this rather than just a plain graph pad like that. Obviously you can use the method to get this sort of square. You could use it in here, so you've got your own you've got the double sized square paper with the niche. I'll just delete that. So I'll just add some more pages. We will add 109, master page D. And again, there's no reason why you couldn't make other master pages and just change the image in the background to a different crop. The front page, of course, is always used to niche down even further. So we'll go back to Mr. Carrot. Now, obviously, this is colour. If you've got suitable black and white images, use them instead if you want to create a black and white printed book. As I've said, the standard colour option is quite reasonable, but black and white's always cheaper. So then all that's left to do is, do I have a plant Yes. You know, it's all about tying things in. Get your font in there. And then this is going to be just simply my, I don't know why it does that. My vegetable planner. Think of a more snappy title than that. And there you go. If you're using colour, change that to green, the universal colour of plants. And that's it. I will just export this to show you what it looks like. I'll just do spreads. Obviously, you'll be doing it as pages for KDP. The beauty of this sort of graph paper, as with everything I've shown you over the last few videos, is that you can change it just by simply changing the images in the master page. So this is gardening. You could do one with maths equations in the background. You know, market it for maths students. You could add, you know, knitting patterns. People use graph paper to create knitting patterns and cross stitch. Put the right imagery on this pad and you can sell it to any niche. You can make as many books as niches you can think of, and then times that by 4, because you've got 4 different sizes of graph paper. That's all there is to it. You've just got to, you know, tie your work into the niche so it doesn't get lost. If you type graph paper into Amazon, you know, you're bombarded with 1 million books. So there it is. Just nice and simple, nice and clean. Still works as graph paper, but you've got your art around it as well. And I'd say it's really, really, really easy to customize. One hint I will give you when you are trying to market these graph paper pads is look at secondary languages, because graph paper translates into any, you know, there's nothing particularly language inhibiting about graph paper. You know, you can tell us a carrot, you don't need the word carrot, or, you know, whatever the language you're marketing for. But I checked, and graph paper in Spanish doesn't have as much competition by 1/10 of the competition that graph paper in English does. You know, and you know, do the Spanish speaking countries need graph paper? Probably. Then probably use it. So that is it for today's video. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel, like and comment on the video. I appreciate everyone who's done that so far. I do drop videos, me getting down with the kids. I do put out videos regularly anyway, you know, once every other day I think. For the next week or so I am going to try and make them daily, just so that people who are starting KDP can, you know, really take a good run at it in 2022. And just get a lot of products under the belt, a lot of quality products, a lot of different products, and, you know, hopefully products that'll sell, instead of just starting off with lined paper. There's too many lined paper pads on KDP. I've said it. People say the market isn't saturated, but it is. That's why you've got to stand out. So yes, thanks for watching, and I shall see you next time.